the idea of having a plan B is making sure that the crew, or in the financial world, I guess the family, is on the same page as how they're going to handle an unexpected threat, and having that rainy day fund ready to go, conservatively invested. So, the stock market doesn't take too much of a chunk out of it when things drop.
Right.
And making sure that you have what we call in the aviation world a shared mental model, right? How are we going to handle this if something doesn't go the way we expect it to? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? And make sure that you know what I'm going to do and I know what you're going to do.
Welcome to the Wiser Retirement Podcast. Are you curious about what flying a plane teaches us about financial risk? I'm Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined with Airline Captain Evan Bogan. Each week, we bring you practical advice on retirement, investing, and planning for your financial future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Let's get started. Hey, Evan.
Hey, Casey. How you doing? Thanks for having me back.
We should have like three gold stars, because you've been, this is your third time doing a podcast with me, and I appreciate that. You're also a great friend and helping me with my own plane.
I'm glad to help. And this time I brought my own idea with us to the podcast.
That's right. Evan does a good job of making sure that I'm a safe pilot, and helped me really get back into general aviation after a break for about, break from aviation for 10 years. I hadn't touched general aviation since like early 2000s. Right. Cessna 182 moves a little differently than a jet.
Right. But the concepts of safety, and that's what we're going to hit on today a little bit, and the planning and the risk management are similar. Right?
Yeah.
So being safe in your airplane is very similar to the concepts that we talk about being safe in a larger airplane.
So before we get started, have you been following any of this, the Indian air crash, the 787?
Yes, I sure have. I think most of us in the industry have. It's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure.
So I think most of the listeners probably been following this thing, but we had the Boeing 787 crash in India, and the latest news is just below the thrust levers, power levers, there's two run and off switches, and it's basically for fuel
control to the engines.
And both were turned off. And it's weird how they don't know which one said it. Like, you think they'd know which pilot said it.
I think they probably do. They just didn't specify. They didn't want to say on their initial report, right?
Yeah. So one of them said to the other, "Why are the switches off?" And the other one says, "I did not do that."
Right.
Yeah. And the English was a little bit different, but that's how it came out. And then one switch was turned back on, and that engine couldn't spool up fast enough to regain altitude.
Right.
And then the other one was turned back on like 10 seconds later or something like that. So it happened right after takeoff. The two switches got flipped. I've been searching, and I just can't find anything that would make those switches go off by themselves, because you have to pull it up over a gate.
Correct. Yeah. It's the
and
same
it's
type of switch.
Nowhere near gear switch. It's nowhere near anything else but that.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with.
So I just don't, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, what are people talking about in your circles?
There's basically two ways this could go, and it's intentional or non-intentional. And I'm not going to make a statement regardless, how that's going to turn out. But they will do a thorough investigation. Lessons will be learned. Hopefully changes will be made for future that will make aviation safer. And that's what all of these unfortunate, tragic events do, is in the long run, the takeaways are the industry becomes safer.
Yeah.
From each and every one of these, we learn and we move on. Unfortunately,
the plane has what they call FADEC, which is the power settings are somewhat automatic, and there were some ADs out on that was optional for an airline to make changes.
Right. Yeah, I did see that.
But I don't understand. FADEC can do whatever it wants to do, but I don't understand how it would make those type of switches ever go off.
There's no way for the switches mechanically to have been moved by a computer glitch.
Exactly.
Right. Now, what goes on behind the switches, that might be a different story. They might look into that.
Yeah. Very true.
Electronic controls. They are electronic switches.
We've been a little surprised by Boeing over the last 5-6 years. Yeah. I'll leave that there.
Yeah.
There's been some Boeing programming surprises that no one knew about except for Boeing that caused some issues.
Now, this airplane has been operating safely
since 2011.
Many years, many tens of hundreds of thousands of hours. So
yeah.
We don't want to jump to conclusions.
No, but I'll say it looks really intentional at this point, which I would say is really good news for Boeing stock and
and being pragmatic about it.
People who fly American carriers.
Yeah.
It's really bad news. I think from a standpoint of who's fit to fly mentally, who's fit to fly. We haven't had that happen, knock on wood, yet in the US. We had a Germanwings airplane where a guy decided that his life was over and he's taking everybody else with him.
Right.
That airline got folded into somebody else after that incident.
We did have that jump seater on that Horizon airplane.
The guy
recently.
On mushrooms.
Yeah.
The guy on mushrooms.
He needed some help as well.
But we had two good pilots flying that were, beating the crap out of him and kicking him out of the cockpit.
Yeah.
So yes, but yes, true. But what if he'd been a pilot?
Right. And if you go farther back, we had FedEx, if you recall, maybe 25 years ago.
Yeah.
The off-duty guy.
Another off-duty guy that was nuts. But the guys flying were
fought him off and were able to get the airplane on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. So mental health and aviation, that's something that I think the FAA has gotten probably better at, but there's probably a whole nother level to go. And probably us knowing people people have to start speaking up.
Yeah. And it has been, that's a whole other topic. We can spend an hour talking about that as well, but it has been in the forefront. ALPA has been promoting, mental health awareness. And so has the FAA, making some changes with regards to pilots' ability to get help for that type of topic.
It used to be we were just focused on the alcohol.
Yeah.
Now I hear less about the alcohol and I hear more about this type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But it's interesting to get your take on that. Being an insider.
Right. And I do work in safety at my company as well. And I have for about 10 years now. And that's the genesis of this idea for this discussion today.
Yeah, sure.
Is risk management and what we call threat and error management in aviation. And I thought, this has a lot of relevance to financial planning as well. And the things we've talked about over the last few years.
So do you think about risk management as a pilot? When I flew for 12 years in commercial aviation, you think about a lot of different things. It's not so much mechanical thinking. You trust the airplane's going to be working properly, right? But it's more of a lot of weather planning, fuel planning, all those things, right?
Right. We talk about two different types of skill. We talk about skill-based issues, and we talk about, we call it the head game, the mental issues, right? So the threat and error management is more in the head rather than the actual stick and rudder skills of flying the airplane. It's the planning and the decision making. We'll talk a little bit about the 5 core skills that we teach pilots to use to handle situations, and it's all in the head.
Yeah.
And
so let's talk about being proactive.
Right. So we break down the threat and error management concept into 2 different buckets. We talk about being proactive and we talk about being reactive. And every company, every airline would have a specific jargon they would use to kind of teach their crews how to handle these things. At my company, we call it expected threats and unexpected threats. Mm-hmm. And other companies might use different terms. But at the end of the day, it's a concept of having a plan to be proactive about threats that we know, threats that we can expect and we can plan for, and then having a plan to be appropriately reactive to threats to the operation that might not be on our radar. Mm-hmm. But we want to have an idea of how we're going to handle those when they arise so that they don't magnify.
So give me an example of proactively.
Proactive would be having a plan for things that you're aware of that are going to be difficult. So in the aviation world, we can talk about complex airspace. If I'm flying to Chicago O'Hare versus if I'm flying to Greenville Spartanburg, I'm going to put a lot more planning and effort into making sure that I'm aware of how the arrival is going to run, how the taxi plan is going to be, how the operation is going to go there in Chicago. Some other expected threats might be I'm flying with someone who's new. My first officer is brand new off of training. So I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time making sure that the first officer is, on the same page as I am with regards to how we're going to operate the airplane. Mm-hmm. Expected weather. I know the weather is not great in a certain situation or a certain destination that we're going to. So I'm going to spend some time making sure that I have the options, making sure I have the right fuel, making sure I have the alternates, things like that. So those would all be examples of expected threats or being proactive for that.
Yeah. And so in financial planning, we would be thinking more the lines of, okay, know that I'm going to die someday.
Unfortunately, yes. It happens
but
to
what
the
if I
best of
died?
us,
What
right?
if I died unexpectedly,
Right.
or I know that I'm aging? So what if I end up in a assisted living / nursing home versus living in my home the rest of my life?
Sure. And
What if I
on a more optimistic topic, things like college, kids going to grow up and go to college. So we want to have a
college.
plan for that, being proactive for that.
Right. Also, if I was disabled through work, what would happen with that? So it's kind of like disability is somewhat like, well, what if weather came into my destination and I couldn't get there? Where's my alternate? Where am I going to land this airplane?
Right.
And have plenty enough fuel that I don't get myself in trouble.
Your financial examples are all dark. Let's go with some more positive ones here. So
we know people are gonna get married.
Sure. Your younger clients are going to want to buy a house. And so I think, we use the word expected threat. Those are not necessarily threats, but they're things that we want to be proactively planning for in the financial world.
True.
Right?
So I guess in my dark examples, I was going with life insurance, long-term care, and disability insurance, right? These are all things that could happen. It's things that you think about happen to everyday people. But these are things that you need to understand how they relate to you. Unfortunately, that world is full of salespeople that want to sell you too much of it. And so, working with a firm like ours as an independent way of looking at it is like long-term care. It costs $12,000 a month to be in memory care. But if you have a good pension, you have good Social Security, and you have a large investment portfolio, you might only want to insure 2,000 of that or 4,000 of that 12 because you have enough resources to cover the rest of you. Or if your spouse has already passed away, then you could always sell the house and use those proceeds to help you. So you maybe not need life insurance at all, or long-term care at all. Same way with life insurance. Like, you don't need a whole life policy, but you definitely probably need a term policy that's a lot cheaper. Maybe you need additional policy outside of work in case you're not at work or not working at the time something happens. But you're going to grow your wealth over time. And so that term can drop off at some point and you don't need life insurance. You're self-insured.
Sure.
And these are all things that we can be proactively thinking about. College savings, again, more the positive side of creating a reserve for college or having a college plan. I have a lot of clients that aren't saving for college, but they have a college plan. It's like, well, it's going to be Zell, or they're going to have to work their way through school, or college isn't for my kid. I want them to find a vocation that they can go and get a certificate and trade and go do that. I had paid $750, so my shower had to get replaced recently.
That's right.
The pipes and all that stuff had to get done too. It wasn't just like a shower head. I could do that. But those people are making good money,
Absolutely.
Right? There's nothing wrong with that, especially if you own the company.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But you might want that college degree to learn how to manage all that, but that's a different story. So just be thinking about the future and what can you do to mitigate the costs or surprises of different events. Very similar in aviation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the financial world, you can just generalize it as saying the rainy day fund. We've heard that term before, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
have the savings, be a saver, so that when something happens, and how you want to invest that savings is something that an expert like yourself can advise.
I forgot about the estate planning one too.
Sure.
Having your will and trust power of attorney, medical directives, all those things set up. So if something happens to you and you're living, then your power of attorney can kick in. If you've passed away, then you've already handled your estate properly. Yeah. So many different angles.
I think one of the hardest concepts for me to accept was when I first started working with you, that my rainy day fund doesn't make me any money. My rainy day fund is there.
Well, it should be making about 4%.
It's not making me a lot, right? It's there, and I see the number, and it doesn't get bigger, but I know that number is going to be there if I need it, right?
Yes,
as opposed
exactly.
to I guess I refer to as play money, which we can afford to take a little more risk with. Hopefully make a few more percentage points.
I'm working on a project now, which I have not disclosed publicly, so I'll just say project. But one of the things I wrote about was the what is the rate of return of a rainy day fund? Truly. And I used an example of a client who's a CEO of a company. His job got cut during COVID. They didn't like the direction he was going, whatever reason. So went from a high paying job to no job. Well, CEOs don't get jobs like tomorrow. You go get, you apply and we'll hire you to be our CEO. It was like a 1.5 year, almost 2 year process for him, but he burnt through a good chunk of his reserve. Mm-hmm. But when he got the job he wanted, it paid more than the old job, had better incentives, but it took him almost 2 years to get it. So I calculated, assuming he stayed there for 5 years, his rate of return was like 1,100%. Right. Where if he had nothing, he would have to take like a lesser of a job somewhere else, probably making good money. He's a very talented person, but it wouldn't have been the same as this job.
Right.
So you're looking for 1,500% rate of returns. Hopefully you never have to be in that position. But yeah, that's an example of how you should be thinking about your reserve.
And I think that's a really good segue to the second component of the threat and error management concept, which is having a plan to be reactive to an unexpected threat.
Yeah.
And in an airplane, an unexpected threat could be a mechanical failure. It could be a last minute change in the weather that we haven't planned for.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have enough fuel for an alternate, and all of a sudden a thunderstorm shows up over Atlanta, which happened about a week and a half ago and caused a big mess, unfortunately.
Right.
And then, 95 airplanes divert to Savannah and Greenville, Spartanburg, and then you're on the ramp and you have an international airplane and you have no customs to clear you, and you're stuck on the airplane for hours. And these things happen, and we can't plan for all of them. But we have to make sure.
When you're glad you bought that first class seat.
That's right.
Otherwise, the back gets really tight.
Yeah.
Become claustrophobic
for sure. Yeah, I know that was a rough day for a lot of folks, employees and passengers alike.
Yeah, absolutely.
The idea of having a plan B is making sure that the crew, or in the financial world, I guess the family, is on the same page as how they're going to handle an unexpected threat, and having that rainy day fund ready to go, conservatively invested. So, the stock market doesn't take too much of a chunk out of it when things drop, and making sure that you have what we call in the aviation world, a shared mental model, right? How are we going to handle this if something doesn't go the way we expect it to? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? And make sure that you know what I'm going to do and I know what you're going to do.
Right. Aviation is, people get on the plane. It's just routine now. I don't think they understand. And a lot of flights are routine, but I don't think the
vast majority of them are, thankfully. Yes.
I don't think they understand what it takes, to do aviation well. We do it so well here in the US. Right. People complain about Spirit and Frontier and all these other airlines. Their safety record is just as good, if not some cases better, because of their shorter time as of being around as any other airline. You can get on a Spirit, you can get on a Frontier, you can get on a Delta, and American, United. Right. I have full confidence in those crews, 100%.
I do. And I've got good friends at all those companies, and I would absolutely not second guess getting on their airplane for one moment.
The product behind the door might seem a little different.
That is
different. But your the safety record is still there. But I remember I was headed to I believe where was it? Newport News. And we were just trucking along. Like, it's no big deal. It was like the last leg of a 4-day trip. And I checked the weather. I'm sorry, it was Norfolk. I was checking the weather in Norfolk. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a thunderstorm on top of the field, and it doesn't appear to be moving anytime soon. Now, it was forecasted to be there, potentially. And I was like, this thing's not moving. It's still there. And so, oh, man, we have to go to alternate. And I started thinking about all the things I was going to do when I got home, and that's going to be really late, And then I look at the alternate airport. There's a storm on top of that airport too.
Unexpected threat.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is all right. And that thing's not moving. And then I started figuring, well, where else could we go? And I started doing the math, and like the next place was Washington Dulles. And then I started looking at the fuel, and I going, I don't know if I got enough fuel to get to Washington Dulles. And so I immediately slowed the airplane down to, like, the best economical speed. And then we also climbed, because we're fairly low. And I was like, we need to get higher. So we climbed a little higher. You burn a little fuel up there.
Right.
Well, long story very short, we were able to talk, because there's a lot of restricted airspace around DC.
Right.
So we couldn't fly over everything, but we were able to pretty much do a power off descent all the way down until final at Dulles. We land. I still have an hour worth of fuel left, which I had calculated as 0.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Yeah.
So I was like, great. I created an hour's worth of fuel by rerouting, getting reroutes, getting more direct. and we land, and all the passengers was like really pissed off that they were in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was like, but you were so close to landing in a beach somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
So the point is, you have to improvise sometimes, which you do we have to do in personal finance at times. But also, just always be respectful for those people up front that are that have your lives in their hand and they're trying to make the best decision.
We do. Yeah.
Before we continue, do you want to make the most of your airline's 401k plan? We've created free 401k allocation guides for most major airlines to help you do just that. Download yours for free at pilotretirement.com. Now back to the episode.
So I think one of the hardest things for people to do when they come up with these strategies or try to come up with these strategies is just try to figure out how to develop them.
Yeah.
So in the aviation world, when we teach crews to create strategies both proactively and reactively, we use what we call the 5 core skills, the 5 core crew resource management skills, and these are concepts that allow crews to create effective mitigation strategies, both proactively and reactively. And you just hit one of them there, the decision-making skill, right? Well, I think probably we'll hit that one in a couple minutes because that's a little bit later down the list. The first one is planning, right? So planning is a big part of being safe, both proactively and reactively in aviation and in finance, right?
Yeah, I think it's, if you have a lot of debt, if you're living on 100% of your income, you have the inability to react.
Sure.
Right.
You're trapped.
You're trapped in kind of that situation, and bad things can kind of spiral and get worse. When you're living below your means, you have a good emergency reserve established. You have options, and with option, I mean, maybe you're on a great path going forward, but then the path is not as good, or the path takes a little jog to the left or to the right, but you still end up at your destination.
Right.
Right.
And I think we talked about that on my first visit with you. We talked about the parallels between flight planning and financial planning.
Right.
And
exactly.
I think you'll probably refer to that episode here before we close.
So I think being reactive and a financial standpoint to surprises is just having the ability to be able to do that. Even in your own life recently, you've had to be reactive.
Right. Yeah. And I don't mind sharing that example of an unexpected threat. We had in our family unexpected financial requirement for a medical issue with one of my children. Mm-hmm. And insurance declined to cover that particular medical process that he needed. That's a whole other topic right there.
We're not talking about $5,000 either.
No,
it's a very big bill.
Right. So, we have the ability to step back and kind of smile about it now. But once we got over the sticker shock of the expense that we were looking at, we expanded our team. And the first thing my wife said to me was, okay, call Casey. And we did. And we sat in our car and we had a good conversation with you. And the first thing you said was, you're going to be fine. Right. Because you're familiar with our financial situation and you knew that we had the ability to weather the storm, so to speak. Right. And so expanding the team, getting expert opinions on any situation in aviation or in finance is extremely important. There's no way for us all to be experts in everything we would like to be. Right. Even though many pilots like to think we are.
Right. You want a confident pilot, but sometimes it works against us. Doesn't
occasionally it does. Occasionally. And that's a joke. And I think all of our spouses would smile at that one as well. As their airline pilot husbands climb tall ladders to fix things that they're not qualified to fix and things like that.
Right.
But, we had that plan in place for unexpected threats. We had that relationship with you. We'd been working with you for several years. So you were able to tell us very quickly that we could weather that storm. And that was very, very much a relief to us.
Yeah. It's you're able to do that because you'd gone through the financial planning process. That's really important for so many families, and maybe they have it just fine, but there's gaps that can be filled in. And that's where, we always like to tell people that we're a financial planning firm that happens to do asset management, because financial planning is so important. And I think only about 4% of wealth management firms actually do real financial planning. Everyone else is more of time value money calculations based on how much money you have invested with them. And yeah, your retirement will be fine. But, what you went through had nothing to do with your retirement.
Right. Right.
Whatsoever. You've been, any other advisor would have been very ill-equipped if they didn't have a full picture of what was happening overall. Right.
Absolutely. Communication is the next step, or the next core skill. And that's huge, obviously, in the flight deck, making sure that the pilots are talking to each other, making sure that we're on the same page. We have the ability to effectively communicate. Yeah. But I think that that's huge in personal finance as well, especially within the family dynamic, right?
Man, what we do, I joke with our new hires here is I say, you have a finance degree or you have a personal financial planning degree, but you should have done all your electives in psychology because so much of what we do is helping families sometimes heal. And you might have a really dominant personality. Another person is just kind of, okay, go along for the ride. But when you make these big decisions, you don't need to make them by yourself. When you're a pilot, you shouldn't be making it because you're the captain. You need to take in input from everyone else. And sometimes you have blinders on to the situation. We were coming into Atlanta one time. It was a quick flight from Chattanooga. And every time the airplane coupled with the approach, it would start porpoising up and down. So it only happened at like 2,500 feet. So we'd be descending down to Hartsfield, and then right at 2,500 feet, it would pitch up, it would pitch down, it would pitch up, it would pitch down. I'm like, what the heck is going on with this thing? You can't do a visual approach, right? And so we asked to be broken out, and they'd circle back around. We did it twice. Mm-hmm. And now they're getting angry with us because Atlanta's not really built for that. Right. I was like, I'm sorry, your glide slope is something's not right, and then the people in front of us, traffic in front of us was getting through just fine. So I was like, well, it must be something with how our plane's receiving that signal for whatever reason. And I was like, I was out of options. Like, well, I could just kind of take the hand fly it, take the average as I descend down to the ground. I'm like, that doesn't seem logical because I don't trust what I'm seeing. And then so in my head, I'm like, well, just got to go back to Chattanooga at this point. And finally the first officer says, well, we could just shoot the GPS approach.
Right.
I'm like, oh, right. We have other approaches in Atlanta other than just the ILS. It takes someone like that in your life to go, hey, we have these other approaches here. And sometimes that's your spouse. And sometimes that's a family member who's really close to you in the situation. And that's what I love about these family meetings, when you sit down with the family and you allow everyone to have input. And the person I want to hear from the most is usually the very quiet wife. Right. The very quiet wife very often has all the answers, but is not being listened to. And so you need to make sure that you're having, you allow input and you allow people to speak. And every now and then it's a quiet husband, but for the most part,
right.
It's the quiet wife who's done all the analyzing, the thinking. And she says, well, I think this is what I think. And he's kind of looking over there like, well, why didn't you say this before?
Right. And there's a couple of psychological terms we use in aviation to describe why this happens. Planned continuation bias is one that I use quite often when we see a crew that gets so fixated on completing the mission as they planned it. They are not open to the changes that might have to be made due to outside influences.
Yeah.
Right? So I intended to complete this flight as planned.
We're going to make it. Dadgummit.
And so sometimes it takes the other person to snap let's say the pilot flying the airplane out of that fixation and say, hey, listen, something's different here. We need to make a change in our plan. And that's very relevant, I think, to finances as well.
There's been 2 crashes recently in general aviation with people with perfectly good airplanes where the door came open.
Oh, very frustrating.
There is no reason why those people should not be alive. Right. The whole family's gone. And it's because they got so distracted by a silly door.
Right.
It's loud. It's obnoxious. Passengers freak out because they're, oh my God, I could fall out. You're not falling out. Right. The wind is keeping that door pretty much closed. It's just, you hear the air coming through the crack,
Right.
And both times the pilots managed to stall the airplane. And there's so much in life that the same thing happens where the door is just a little cracked. We can solve this. But if you don't get if you don't talk to a third party who really understands how to solve problems, you financially come spiraling down because you didn't react properly.
Yeah.
I see that with low income families. And they just liquidate the 401k plan. They paid 41% in tax. They didn't, in one case recently, didn't even file disability. Like, if you're disabled, why would you file disability? Your company paid for disability. Instead, you emptied out your 401k plan.
Right. Yeah.
Just doing silly things like that,
Right. Man, you don't have to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Within a family, you can share the workload. You can share the workload with your financial advisor, the other members of your team, so to speak. There doesn't have to be one person making all the decisions and doing all the work.
Right.
Right. And that very rarely works out well for, in an aviation environment or in a financial environment.
Yep. There's technology and people to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, at the end of the day, someone has to just make a decision, right? You have to expand your team. You have to get all the best resources you can to tell you what their thoughts are.
Yeah.
But at some point, you just need to make a decision, right? And you can't beat yourself up over that decision if it turns out to be the wrong one, because we're not all perfect.
Yeah.
As much as we try. And occasionally we're going to make a decision that we regret, and we have to move on from it, both financially and, less frequently in the airplane. I think most of us, by the time we get to the point where we're flying airplanes for professionally, we're pretty confident in our decision-making abilities, but even the best make mistakes, right?
Right.
And we all learn from them.
Another example I've been giving kind of, these worst case scenario examples, but on the more positive side, especially in aviation, pilots are making more money than they have historically, even adjusted for inflation.
Right.
Times are pretty good. And you have the ability to do, if you're maintaining your lifestyle, which many pilots do, you're having the ability to make life-changing decisions or life-changing events for children down the road. And what happens is you might be making a lot of money. You don't feel like you need a financial advisor, but you could be doing some things differently with your resources to really help the next generation, or even put yourself into retirement in a much different trajectory than you would have without it.
Sure.
And it's not always portfolio management, but it has a lot to do that. It's like, what do I do with my extra dollar? Where's my extra dollar go? And there's a lot of things. We call it the opportunity fund, but in opportunity money there's a lot of opportunity,
right?
Which is why we call it the opportunity bucket. But putting dollars into your opportunity money to grow that for the future, that's not inside. You already paid tax on it. It's managed tax efficiently. It's not inside your 401k plan. It could be anything. My rule is it needs to build legacy. So that could justify the boat, but we're taking kids or grandkids out on the boat and we're going to build memories on it.
Sure.
Real estate's always usually a good investment, right? So a second or third property, it could be maybe at retirement, you pull it all out and there's a round the world trip, although most pilots don't want to travel anymore after they retire.
I've spent half my life at Hartsfield, and I think I'll be more than done with that when I retire.
Yes, exactly. So, but maybe there's something you've always wanted to do, and you take the whole family with you, or whatever it is. It's that opportunity bucket that people could be missing out on because they didn't plan, even in the best of times.
Right.
And the opportunity bucket also could be an extended emergency reserve. Something tragic happened, but that's probably not going to happen. So reality is that's what's so good about the planning process is you're able to find these areas where people can improve, which is why even the people in the best of situations have gone through our planning process and still felt like it was 100% worth the time that it took to do it.
Absolutely. Right. Once you've expanded your team, done your research, communicated, planned, made your decision, you need to monitor the outcome of that decision, right? And some people are more interested in monitoring it themselves. You offer the hourly checkups once a year or whatnot, or whatever you call it there.
Right.
Or you can just pass that monitoring responsibility right on and have an actively managed portfolio, right?
Yeah. And I'll segregate it out. So opportunity money. Yes, we have a couple of platforms that pilots could benefit from. If most of your money is in your 401k plan, I don't believe in charging 401k management fees. My competitors do. They're charging 1 to 1.5% a year.
Right. That's
if you're
huge.
a 35-year-old pilot and you work at Delta, United, American, they all have pretty much the same benefits. if you work until age 65, you spend over $3 million in fees. I can't justify that.
That is a lot of money.
And honestly, unions, the companies have done a great job of getting really good 401k plans. You don't need to be using brokerage links and all that stuff. Focus on the core index funds inside those plans, and you'll be just fine. In fact, on our website, you can go to wiserinvestor.com. On the pilot section, we have free allocations.
And I just updated my allocations last week from you.
So we literally give for free what everybody else is charging money for.
Right.
Even firms like there's Allworth, which has a group that focuses on pilots indirectly through another one of our pilot friends. He lives near a guy who works for that company, and they try to pick apart my models and saying their models are better because of this, what they're going to charge you 1.5% for. And when I was able to actually level the playing field and show him apples to apples, our models do just fine. Somewhat similar to what they're doing, maybe slightly better in certain situations.
Right.
But the bottom line is we could save you $3 million, and which one's better is you're literally splitting hairs. So we started the flat fee planning program for the pilots. Other people use it as well, but that's why it's there. You pay a one-time fee, you go through the process. And then if you have money that's outside the Delta plan that we can't get into it, then yes, we have two options for asset management. But most pilots are on the flat fee until you retire. Once you retire, I can justify a management fee. I can show you our cash management system and how that's set up and how we manage it and why that fee's worth it. But when you're in the building wealth stage, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We do have pilots who have inherited assets. We have quite a few of those because that's where we are in our age right now, right? We have parents that are leaving us permanently, and we have assets that need to be handled. We do a lot of that because that, again, we can justify our fees for that.
Right.
But I do not want to take someone's 401k plan and charge you a management fee. In fact, the companies that do it, that's the only way they can make money. They're not set up as fiduciaries. They're not set up the same way we are as fee only. So therefore, they can only move your money to the brokerage link and then stick you with that fee.
Right. Yeah.
And we all know pilots don't want to pay any extra fees, right?
Where's my discount?
Where's my discount? Exactly. We even have a pilot discount. I get a chuckle every time I talk to someone about our process. I said, this is our normal price, but because pilots love discounts, we discounted it by this amount. Everyone chuckles about that.
Of course.
The younger generation doesn't care as much about discounts, though. They didn't have to go through what you and I went through.
Right. The $10 an hour job out of college. Yes. Yeah. Right.
And when you're talking to a 25-year-old who's now like a captain at Delta, you're just like, this is nuts. Like when I was 25, I got paid $18.75 an hour to fly Beach 1900 in the Northeast. Right. Yeah. And I lost money every time I went to work.
Of course.
There was no per diem because we didn't overnight. It was day trips. You know, it was bad.
This is where we start shouting at the clouds like Grandpa Simpson.
But we were happy to do it.
Yeah,
because we love aviation. Yeah. We were happy to do it. That's the question I get a lot: is how come you didn't go to Delta, or how come you didn't go to a major? And I was like, because I flew in the worst possible time you could be flying. We experienced September 11th, the financial crisis.
Right.
That was a really bad decade. I was happy. I was at Atlantic Southeast Airlines, which I hit their peak. Because they were adding regional jets like crazy. So I was moved right up the seniority list at the perfect time. But I didn't hit the transition to the major at the perfect time. There were a lot of people still on furlough when I was at ASA.
It's all about timing.
It's all about timing in your birth date. I will say if you have younger people that are listening and they want to get into aviation, I always tell them go to the opposite regional carrier of where you want to be.
That's been a good bet recently, right?
Yeah,
the majors are not willing to decimate their regionals to bring folks up.
You want to be at Delta, or you live in a Delta hub, then you need to go fly for Envoy, and then Delta hires you because they're picking you off the competition,
right?
Some guys were unfortunately didn't upgrade fast enough, but there's guys over at Spirit that were furloughed. I think they're going to be in a hard spot because all they have is FO time. But but there were times if you're still an active pilot at Spirit, you can get into Delta when Delta starts hiring again because they love to pick from their competition.
Right.
Yeah. But if you want to be at American, you wouldn't go to Envoy. Maybe you go to Endeavor, which is Delta's feeder, or Republic, and then you get over that way.
Yeah. Right now, everything's kind of slowed down a little bit, but for in the next year or two, I think it'll pick up.
I think American's still hiring right now. Delta's stopped for a little bit.
Right. I think so.
I'm not sure about United. I haven't followed them as much as far as their hiring practices, but
right. There will be another pickup in the age 65 retirements here in the next few years, unless something changes in Washington as far as the retirement age, which I'm hearing rumors of again, but that's a whole other story here.
Yeah. We could kind of end on that note, but I think 67 would be really good for guys who didn't save enough.
Right. Or, all those folks that are in that age bracket now went through the bankruptcies and
that's what I'm saying.
And mergers of the early 2000s. Yeah. So it'll give them a couple more years to make up for what they lost, for sure. Yeah.
But you also have to keep your medical. So I wouldn't know if I would, as a planner, am I going to bank on you making to 67? Yeah.
I think most pilots of this generation are a little bit more aware of the
more health conscious,
to stay healthy, right? Than the smoking, drinking whiskey pilots of the 70s and the 80s.
The Tiger Express guys from a long time ago.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, the longevity of a pilot isn't that long. It's a lot shorter than other people.
I have heard that. I don't have the numbers to support it, but
I've
heard that
it's an old study. There's an ALPA study. It's old now.
Especially the long haul, because I know that's hard on the body.
Yeah.
All the time.
The long haul people for sure. That's probably one of the most common questions I get in planning is they come in and say, hey, should I go to the wide body the last couple of years? I'm like, why? Why would you subject your body to that? And if this is an ego thing and you're like, just want to say, I flew the 330, but
I have no need for that. I'm happy on my 737.
Right. Well, that's a very passionate debate too. 737 versus the versus the 320. I went down to see a client down in Florida, and I came home on the first flight. It's like 6 a.m. in the morning, coming back to work, and I took a picture and I had a great shot of the engine and the wing, and then the beautiful sunrise. And how many negative comments I got? Said, "Ew, you had to ride on a 737."
It's okay. I get it from my son as well. He visited the cockpit on an Airbus recently to see the pilots, and he saw how big it was and the tray table and the side stick. And he goes, "Dad, I hate to break it to you, but I think I want to fly an Airbus." And he's a teenager, so okay, he likes to disagree with Dad on everything. So.
Right, exactly. That's funny. Well, thanks for listening to today's episode. We got a few more pilot related episodes out there. 253, Navigating the Future of the Airline Industry. That was a great episode. Episode 264, Shaping the Future of Aviation, Key Leadership Skills for Pilots. And then a long time ago, episode 194, I did Delta, American, and United, who's got the best pilot retirement offering. We've got a few more videos out now on the YouTube channel, which is A Wiser Retirement. New Delta Airlines non-qualified deferred comp plan for pilots. I don't know how I feel about that. You can listen to my opinion there on that video. Pilots, Roth or no Roth. We have a big push. Everyone's going to put money into a Roth IRA. No one's going to save pre-tax anymore, but yet they're making pretty good money. That creates an issue. We got a few competitors out there that want you to put everything into a Roth and pay all your tax right now, which is a bit of a scam, I think. Why financial planning is different for pilots. That's partially why we do some of these episodes every now and then is we think differently, and we have very different benefits. Most common thing I get through my team tells me as pilots go through the planning process is they decided to work with this firm before they learned about us. And they kept telling them, no, you got that wrong. You don't get 18% into your 401k plan. You need to go back to HR and ask them what your match is. Actually, you do. Because there used to be a pension and the pension went away. And so unions negotiated, and now there's 18% of what you make goes into your 401k plan. But people in the regular world just don't understand that.
Right. That's a very different concept than most.
Well, Evan, thank you for doing this. Thank you for keeping us safe professionally as your career, but also to general aviation as well.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
For me, and
thanks for all the good advice you've given me and my family.
Maybe it's a trade.
Absolutely. Sounds like a good trade to me.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.